sometimes because the cable it's actually turns around, so when it goes through, it kind of looks like it's going through in an opposite direction. Let's go ahead and make sure we have our spacer back in place, and go ahead and feed your antenna wire back through the unit to the underside, and we'll get everything pulled back through. And at this point, you're going to want to just go ahead and put the upper shell back on, because we've completed that portion and you don't want anything to fall out while you're working. So go ahead and place the upper half of the shell back on, and we'll go ahead and put our screws back in. Yeah, we got one more screw, and we can put the sticky pads back on later while we're finishing up the unit. Alright, so before we go further, there's one last part of the upper shell right here. You're going to put on, it does have an open end and a closed end. The closed end will butt up against the hinge and keep that in place. So we'll go ahead, you got to make sure that your hinge is all the way in. If it's at all, even just a little bit, then it's not going to seat properly. Go ahead. And also remember that the new shells, not all of the older parts will fit together properly. So sometimes you do have to use all of the newer parts in order to get everything together. So we're going to go ahead and put our screw back in to hold that upper unit together. There we go. Now we can go ahead and seat the lower LCD back into place, and we're going to reattach the ribbon cable. So we like to use a small piece of double-sided tape, as it just makes it that much easier. If you don't have double-sided tape, usually the adhesive on the back right there will still be sticky enough. And go ahead and just trim that off with your hobby knife. And then if you did cut this off and you're using the original ribbon, you can lay it exactly back into place, just following the cut that you previously made before. And there we go. Now we're going to go ahead and put the motherboard back on. The ribbon cable will need to be folded backwards over itself from the upper LCD, so that way it lays properly onto the motherboard. And then over here you have the 3 ribbon cables, 2 from the LCD and 1 from the touch screen. So we'll go ahead and feed all 3 of those back up through the motherboard. Make sure your antenna does not get stuck underneath. Got everything set down. So if you want to just keep the motherboard from moving, make sure everything gets where it's supposed to be. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put the screws back in to secure the motherboard. So there's a total of 4 screws. And in the next couple steps is where you really want to make sure that you have a pair of tweezers. The LCD ribbon cables, unlike the DS Lite, do not have any tabs on them to let you know when they are fully seated. And they're a little tougher to actually get plugged back into place. So with your ribbon cable in the back folded over, it should poke out right at the upper LCD ribbon, and you go ahead and just set that into place on your ribbon cable like that. You want to take your tweezers and you're going to grip the ribbon cable on the back of it and use the tougher plastic they have on the end as kind of leverage to push the ribbon cable into its slot. And there you go, you see that it just seated. Alright, and then you just flip down your clip, and we'll go ahead, do the same over here. The lower 2 smaller ribbon cables are a little bit easier, as they have a piece that slides out and then back in to lock them into place. And we'll do the touchscreen clip. Go ahead and slide that into place and push that back down. If you don't push these down, they might not make proper contact. And if it's your LCD, it won't work properly, and if it is your touchscreen clip, it won't work properly. It'll only have a very slight connection. And the same thing we did with the upper LCD ribbon. You have this edge of plastic that you're going to use with your tweezers as a way to push in the unit, the ribbon to the touchscreen, or to the ribbon cable clip. Once you have that in all the way, you go ahead and lock it down and you have it secured. And then before you put the unit back on, just put on your antenna cable. Go ahead and put that down. And if you have any slack, you want to make sure you just kind of turn it to the side, so that way it's not going to lay over your screw holes or anything like that. And then put on your left and right shoulder buttons. They're relatively easy. There's this little channel right here below your left and right shoulder buttons that spring will go into. So all you have to do is set the spring into it, and drop the button into place. So we'll go ahead and do the same on this, and I'll hold it up so you can see it a little better. So go ahead and get it under, and it just gets right into place. Now you just take your lower shell, put it on, and we'll go ahead and put in the tri-wing screws. Start here at the battery cover. I always like to start at the battery cover, that way it's actually holding the unit in. And I can go ahead and test it before completing assembly. So if you're not experienced with repairing these units, you can, before you begin to screw anything down, go ahead and get your ribbon cable seated and test the unit before you get everything together and have it all taken apart, so you can know what is and is not working. On the DS, if you did not fully seat your ribbon cable, it does not have a green flash as you would get on the DS Lite. If your ribbon cable is not connected properly, you will not get anything to happen. You might hear a very faint sound come out of your speakers, but the unit will not flash, and you'll have a solid orange on the charger. So any ribbon cables that you disconnected, you're going to want to go back and check to make sure that they have been properly attached. And then the last screw. And now we'll go ahead and put our sticky pads back on to the top half of the unit. So your two bumper pads, they're thicker than the lower two, do go at the top, and they act as, they'll just absorb the shock if you close the unit hard, and help to keep everything nice and neat. So we have just two more. And now we can go ahead and put the battery in the unit and replace the battery cover and power it on. There we go. Let's turn the unit over. Press your power button. And we'll check the touchscreen, make sure it's working properly. And we are good to go. We've just repaired a lower broken hinge on the Nintendo DS. All parts can be purchased. You can also order a tri-wing screwdriver. And we have a list of videos for other repairs also. And that's it. We've successfully repaired this unit.